Let's pay homage to the Supreme Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu. All right, today we are going to start yet another discussion on Four Noble Truths. So today that we have to discuss about the origin of suffering. So we discussed about the noble truth of suffering and four characteristics of the truth of suffering. So today we have to discuss about the four ways in which suffering is inflicted, or the four characteristics of the cravings or the origin of suffering. We start our lesson on 116, the page number.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The four ways in which suffering is inflicted. In consonance with the Patisambhida Magga Pali, there are four ways in which craving manifests itself, to wit, Ayuhanattaya, Nidanattaya, Samyogattaya, and Palibodattaya. So these are the four ways that the craving or the suffering is inflicted. So the number one, the first is Ayuhanattaya. So Ayuhana means the creativity inherent in craving. So the craving has special abilities. So we are going to discuss those abilities. So here we discuss about the ability to establish and create the suffering. The ability of the force of craving for assembling, creating and establishing the five skandhas fraught with birth, aging, death, grief and lamentation is designated Ayuhanattaya. The mind floundering in the terrain of ignorance regards the five aggregates to be of long duration, although the form dies. The ignorant regards at least certain parts of the five skandhas to be of lasting duration, of taintless while it is highly tainted, of pleasing nature when it is to the brim, one of displeasure and suffering. Thus far, the ignorant attaches and grasps onto the five skandhas as an entirety, as an entity of pleasure, as the most cherished of all objects, and consequently, its expiration so as fearsome as to render it to the greatest cataclysm ever to befall on him. So the craving is the deciding factor, one of the dominant factors to assemble and create and establish the five skandhas. So we discussed before the five skandhas means the suffering. Though we, because of the normal people, the mundane people's ignorance, we consider or be deceived by the five aggregates as a self or being. And we attached to the five aggregates unknowingly due to ignorance. So this craving creates repeated sufferings, repeated skandhas. That's what we call ayuhanatta, the creativity inherent in craving. All this leads to the ignorance, dire, exuberant effort to preserve the five aggregates at all cost. He replenishes the depleted and worn out tissues of the body by taking food. In order to bring forth new pleasurable feelings, he supplies himself with beautiful figures, rupas, and sweet sounds. He also exerts himself in eliciting new sensations, mental concomitants, sanskaras, and consciousnesses, vijnanas. If there are activities resorted to by both humans and other beings, both in day and night, those activities are directed to and done for the sake of skandhas, more accurately, to deriving pleasure via the skandhas. Those who perform acts of merit do so mostly for the sake of skandhas, to be begotten in the future lives. In the world, those who do acts of merit for the sake of transcending the skandhas and achieving the summum bonum of nirvana, if there are any, are rare indeed. Since beings are engaging in activities and procure for them a new group of skandhas, example, new forms, rupas, new pleasurable feelings and vijnanas. In the present as well as in the future, these beings are endowed with or beget new forms, feelings, sensation, mental formations, and consciousness. So it says the beings do various activities to get the gratification of sense desires because of the craving. And here it says that even though beings do merits, mostly the beings perform meritorious deeds to get happiness in this life or even future lives. And those who do meritorious deeds to transgress the skandhas is very rare according to this explanation.
So, Bhante,
Yes,
so
please.
in this explanation, how are we, if we look at ourselves, how are we to understand when we do a meritorious deed, if it is simply for the sake of the skandhas, or whether it is really to transcend the skandhas and achieve nirvana? How should we think, or how should we observe our mind working?
Yes, when we perform meritorious deeds, if we are skillful enough that we can keep a wish, this sort of meritorious deeds may help us to achieve the supreme bliss of Nibbana. That's the way that you should think about your meritorious deeds. And yes, people arrange for various reasons, right? To transfer merits to parents or relatives and to get blessings. Yes, but whatever the reasons you perform meritorious deeds, you have to And if you can keep that wish to achieve the supreme bliss of Nibbana, that is the most important thing, because other the blessings you get whether you wish or not when you perform meritorious deeds.
Bhante, when you're doing a meritorious deed, if you have no specific thought and you're just doing it, maybe, I don't know, just without thinking you do.
Yeah, just for the sake
How
of doing
does
or
that
something?
begin?
For the sake of doing or something?
Not the sake of doing, like, because you know it's like the right thing to do, because you know it's a good thing to do.
Yes. So in these occasions, it says like that we can divide the meritorious deeds into two groups, like Vattagamini Kusal and Vivattagamini Kusal. Vattagamini Kusal means that the meritorious deeds you perform, they uh, cause just the rebirth, repeated rebirth, probably maybe in heavenly places, but it is still in the realm of samsara. So if you perform meritorious deeds and keep a wish to achieve Nibbana, that's called Vivattagamini, which means they can be reason to transgress the five aggregates.
So we have to train ourselves always to be very conscious of when we are doing meritorious deeds, how
Absolutely.
we think about it, is it?
Absolutely, yes. And we should manage our mindset not to mainly focus on worldly, gains. They happen eventually. I mean, as a result, when you perform meritorious deeds, whether you wish it or not. But most important thing to wish the supreme bliss of the Nibbana. So there's a story in one of the previous Buddha's times. There were two brothers. So younger brother performed a meritorious deed, and when he performed the meritorious deed, he used one of the belongings um, of his elder brother, and he thought, I perform this meritorious deed, and if my brother want the money for what I got from him, that I would pay. Otherwise, I would give the merits, um, or I would share the merits what I accumulate. So then, after performing meritorious deed, then he offered something to Pacceka Buddha. Then what his wish was that he wished, may I be able to enjoy the um, divine pleasure as much as possible, and after may I attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, which this Venerable Pacceka Buddha has gained. And then he went to his elder brother and asked, what do you want? If you want the money or the merits. Then the elder brother was happy to accept the merits. And what his wish was, he wished as soon as possible, I wish to achieve the supreme bliss. And then, as a result, he was able to achieve the enlightenment, I think, very next Buddha's time. While the younger brother who wished the divine pleasures as long as he could, and at the end, he wished the Nibbana. So he had to spend several number of times.
Long
I mean,
time.
in yes, Buddha's appearances of Buddhas, and he attained arahanthood in our Buddha's time. So he had to spend more time in the samsara while his elder brother was able to terminate the suffering way more earlier than him. So it shows how important to prioritize the wishing the nibbana, whatever the merits you perform.
Thank you, Bhante. That's a good lesson.
Yes. Okay, let's move on. If there are suffering in the world, they have their provenance in the very five skandhas. As skandhas are the metrics of suffering, the skandhas are in themselves suffering. As skandhas are originated, simultaneous with it also arise forms of suffering such as birth, aging, and death, etc. Therefore, if there is any exertion or effort on the part of the being to generate skandhas afresh, it is an exertion to renew suffering. Exertion to renew skandhas is an exertion to welcome suffering. Thus, the beings, having seen the blemishes and taints of the skandhas, having disheartened of it and eradicating the passion for the skandhas, although partaking of food and other essential needs to evade suffering in the present life, yet that being does not do anything to renew suffering in the future. He does not wish to be rejuvenated, revitalized, which means in future skandhas. If one is involved in actions that are directed towards setting in of new set of skandhas in the present and the future, one does so solely due to his deep-seated craving. Therefore, the cause of the regeneration of new skandhas is craving. Accordingly, craving is called the main and primary cause or reason of accumulating and creating a suffering bedrock. So we all know how suffering plays a role of beings who suffer repeatedly in the samsara. But for craving that springs up alongside with the thought current, there is no God, Brahma or Ishvara who supposedly create the skandhas. If there is really creator God, such a God would also be a combination of form, feelings, sensation, mental formations, and consciousness. This combination, like the one possessed by humans, is also a product of craving of the God concerned. The condition being thus, how could such a God ever create other beings? Such creator gods have no power or ability to create others. Craving alone has a potentiality of creating. Therefore, it should be known that craving is a creator. So, we know that according to the teachings of the Buddha, the beings means the aggregates or the skandhas. We know it differs sometimes according to the realms where beings are born. For an example, like non-material realm, Arupaloka, there are only 4 skandhas, 4 aggregates. And there's one of the Brahma realms, there's only the form, the matter. So whatever the beings, how much or how many beings they get the skandhas. Other than skandhas, there's no being. So here this Bhante explains the creator is the craving itself. That craving is a power by which can be accomplished various tasks in empirically testified fact known to intellectuals. If anyone has a passion to do something, restraining from doing that seems for him as oppression, making him ill at ease. Therefore, beings strive to do what they like, those things which they have a passion for. Sometimes beings perform certain acts knowing that after performing those acts would bring great harmful effects on them. Beings are made oppressed when unable to do things of his liking and spurred on to do things that would bring beneficial after effects, because in craving there is a force that thus activates the being. If there is no force in craving that prods a person to do things that call forth ill effects, then the person concerned would not do work that cause patent harm. The force which impels one till one realizes one's passionate desires are, by all intents and purposes, the generative power of craving. So what he says is that the power of the cravings, sometimes we witness beings or the people do terrible things, and sometimes we surprise, right? When we hear or when we witness people do some crazy things. So mainly sometimes even they know the things when they perform some bad activities, but they can't control their desires, right? Some people end up in prisons for rest of their lifetimes when they perform some bad things just because of the craving, the desires. When the desires dominate them, they can't oppress or control those feelings. They tend to do things, whatever the consequences befall them. That's the power of craving. Though we blame beings when they do those bad stuff, but the real reason is this craving. That's what says here. The power of craving is evident to all. To say that being works in merely a conventional mode of speech, in the ultimate sense, there is no being. By virtue of craving, when thoughts and volitions occur in chains, it is told that the being works in the conventional mode of speech. Those motives of thought that are a part of the mind current, which culminate in work, are a part and parcel of the sanskara skandha, just as craving creates those thoughts, motives constituting sanskara, mental formations. It also creates the rest of the skandhas. As much as craving creates feeling, sensations, mental formations, and consciousnesses while still living, so does it create immediately after death. With the help of other causes like karma, 5 skandhas, 4 skandhas, or one of the skandhas. This is known as the reaching a future life. or rebirth in the future. To the extent that there are beings in the world, they are all created by craving. The creator of all beings is but craving. There's a Pali term called Tanha Janinti Purisam. That's what it means. The creator of all beings is but craving. As we've discussed before as well, the craving is the main factor of the beings. So the craving has the ability to regenerate the skandhas. And as we've discussed earlier, that the craving has the ability to establish, create, and assemble the suffering. Suffering means the skandhas here. So that's what the first characteristic of the craving, the creative ability of the skandhas. So then the second characteristics that is called nidhanataya. Craving's power of regeneration of new set of aggregates once the present skandhas get dissolved at death is known as nidhanataya. So simply, the ability to regenerate a birth, which means rebirth. We know that the craving is one of the main and dominant reasons of the rebirth. So that is what it means here, the power of regeneration of new set of aggregates. That's we call nidhanataya. For one who has shattered and eradicated craving, never to rise again, has no rebirth or rebecoming. So we know that in the Ratana Sutra, Jewel Discourse, there is a stanza, Kinang Puranang Navang Natti Sambhavang. That's what it means here. When you eradicate the craving, there's no more rebirth. Because the rebirth is the main factor to create or generate the rebirth. One who dies with craving, unexhausted, reborn in the next life is the form of 5 skandhas, depending on the realm of existence in so short a time as a batting an eyelid. This takes place life after life by the influence of craving. Craving causing 5 skandhas to be reborn in life after life means presenting the being blanketed with craving with new aggregates, repeatedly acting as a causative factor in continuance of life. Therefore, craving is said to be possessed of the quality of nidhanataya. So the ability to regenerate or create rebirth, continuous rebirth, is one of the main abilities or the characteristic of craving. So we know that whatever the beings are born in the world, we witness humans. If we look at the humans, so probably we won't be able to find 2 similar beings, humans, with the appearance or with the attitudes. So why this huge difference? Mainly because of their karma. So individuals has their own karmas, intrinsic karmas for themselves. So that's what the main reason of this sort of varieties of beings, even among humans. And when we look at animals. Imagine how much varieties of animals. Even probably we can't count how many varieties of animals. If you look at the sea, right, there are innumerable of varieties of fish and other creatures, and other animals who live on earth as well. Sometimes huge, like elephants. All right, so all those beings are born in those specific natures because of mainly the karma. Karma, what they have performed before because of the craving. So it shows how much ability that the craving has. And we know that there are 31 realms where beings are born. So wherever the beings are born, the main reason is craving. Even the higher realms, even Brahma realms, they get their rebirth because of the craving. They have the craving, uneradicated craving. Maybe the degrees is different or varies, but still they have the craving. That's why they get their rebirth wherever or whatever the place. So I would like to share a story of a rebirth. So there was, I think probably you might have heard these stories, but I thought to share these stories because they are quite important. So in the Buddha's time, there was a monk, and the monk was offered a robe by one of his sisters, and the monk was so delighted, and he was so attached to the robe, and unfortunately that he passed away. So then at the moment is death, that he somehow he had strong desires towards that particular robe which was given by one of his sisters. Then after he's passed away, the monks, the fellow monks, tried to share his belongings. So then the Buddha prevented them by sharing, by saying, do not touch his belongings for 7 days. Then after 7 days, the monks got what they want from that monk. So then the monks were quite curious why the Buddha prevented that. Then they questioned the Buddha. Then the Buddha said the exact reason why he prevented that. The reason is because of this monk's craving to that particular robe, he got rebirth in the robe as an insect. So if the monks went there and tried to get his belongings, that the small insect probably would get angry, and it may cause him to go or get rebirth in one of the woeful places. So that's why the Buddha prevented them, and after 7 days he passed away and got his rebirth in blissful place. So it shows how the craving, how much this craving is powerful to create the rebirth. So since the Buddha had the special ability to know that he was able to say that exact reason. So that's the ability that the craving possessed to create rebirth. And there's another story. It is called Sukarapotika, which means a female pig. Once the Buddha was traveling with Venerable Ananda, and the Buddha witnessed a pig, a female small pig. And the Buddha smiled looking at that. And you all know that the Buddhas, they don't smile without a reason. So when Venerable Ananda saw that, he questioned the Buddha, why was the reason to smile? So then the Buddha asked, did you see the pig, the female pig? Then the Buddha narrated an interesting story about that pig. The pig, in it's one of the previous lives, that it was a hen. And this hen was listening some of the recitals of the sutras of Satipatthana or something. One of the monks was reciting the sutras in one of the previous Buddha's times. So as a hen, she paid attention to that the pleasing voice, though the hen had no idea what it was listening, but he was pleased to that. And because of that wholesome karma, the hen was able to get rebirth in one of the heavenly realms. And after that, came again to the human realm, and seeing feces, very unpleasant object, and seeing that, she developed some of the meditative states, like we know that, like patikula sanya or something, seeing the repulsive nature of the object, and she developed even trances. And after that, she got rebirth as in heavenly places, and after that she became a queen in the human realm. Then after that, she became a pig. You see how the life goes in the samsara. Sometimes as a heavenly being, sometimes as an animal, again as a like queen in human realm, again in the animal realm. So
Bhante, that is because the queen would have had some kusala kamma that gave rise
yes,
at the end.
yes,
Is it?
unwholesome, yes, of course. But
Yeah.
the root cause is whatever the unwholesome activities perform.
It's the craving.
Craving, the ability of the craving to create various types of rebirths. Yes. So even in heavenly realms, yes, we know, we understand, you get your rebirth in heavenly place because of wholesome actions. But still, even though you get the pleasant or blissful rebirth, the underlying cause, underlying reason, main cause is the uneradicated craving. So that's the second, right? The second quality of the craving, nidanatte, the ability to create the continuous rebirth. like a power of regeneration of new set of aggregates. Yes, repeated rebirths. So then the third ability of the craving is the bonding capacity of craving. So the craving has a strong ability to attach with the things. So we, several occasions, I think we've discussed why beings are attached to skandhas or pleasures. The reason is that the main reason is ignorance. They don't see the consequences of attaching to the skandhas. So I think we've discussed like simile, like cake which is poisoned and looks very pleasant. The skandhas is like quite same. The beings do not see easily the disadvantages, which means the adina of the skandhas. So they only witness the pleasurable nature, even though the most dominant part is the negative or the what do you call, the consequences or the disadvantages. But you are, because of the ignorance, the beings tend to see the pleasurable nature of the skandhas. Yes, the skandhas have that nature to provide, to give you the pleasure. So that's why the beings are strictly, strongly attached to the skandhas, right? But the beings who are intelligent enough to see the true nature of the skandhas, the the negative aspect of the skandhas, they detach from the skandhas, like ones who gain the enlightenment, the Arahanthood, or the Pacceka Buddha, or the Supreme Buddhahood. Those are the ones who see the negative side, negative aspect, or the consequences of the skandhas. So that's why they are able to detach from the skandhas. But most of the beings, they can't see this. So they are strongly attached to the skandhas. The capacity of craving for not allowing the samsaric being to transcend the suffering of the five aggregates to reach nirvana, and consequent bonding attachment of the aggregates to the samsaric cycle of suffering, is known as samyogata. So long as being regards the five aggregates as a source of pleasure, thus long shall his mind be tied onto the five aggregates based suffering. Inasmuch as cow tied onto a tree with a rope cannot step beyond the rope, so is the being wedded by the bond of craving to the five aggregate based samsaric suffering being prevented from reaching the oasis of nirvana. As much as a cow tied onto the tree by means of a rope, after having reached the end of the rope, comes once again close to the tree, so is the being having died in the present life, takes upon a new set of mind, matter aggregates, belonging conventionally to the future life. The being concerned is thus delimited to the group of skandhas on account of craving. Craving is like a cord tying the aggregates in unison. It is owing to this reason that craving was aforementioned as a bond that fastens the being that is the five skandhas. As long as the craving so binds the being, no escape from suffering is possible. The cord of craving that binds beings to skandhas is very strong and robust. Severing it is an onerous task. It can be served only by the weapon of wisdom. No other weapon can sever it. So we know that the Lokuttara Chittas, the path consciousnesses, the Marga Chittas, has a Panya, the wisdom. Only that wisdom has the ability to cut off the craving which creates the rebirth. Until the rebirth, the repeated rebirth is supposed to occur. There is a very pious devotee who performs acts of merit, wishing that he may attain Nibbana, shattering the bonds that tie him to samsaric suffering. To this devotee, this is a person who has the power and potential to make beings attain Nirvana and addresses him thus, friend, you have been arduously wishing for Nirvana. I have come to grant you your much wanted wish. Come with me. I shall make you attain Nibbana today. Thereupon the devotee would be, oh Reverend Sir, I am not prepared to attain Nirvana right now. I have some obligations to be fulfilled. Having fulfilled those obligations, I shall be ready later to go with you. If the Reverend visits this devotee with some obligations to be fulfilled after 10 years, the devotee would present the same answer, so to speak. Though ardently wishing for nirvana, yet the devotee gave such an evasive answer due to the stringent, raucous, rasping, and corrosive nature of the rigidity of craving. It is difficult indeed to unfasten the bonds of craving. There is nobody whosoever who would deliver anyone to nirvana even though being wishes for it. Buddha and his noble disciples only show the way unto nirvana. So the previously what say was a simple simile to emphasize the bonding nature of the craving. What is therefore mentioned is an example to illustrate the rigidity of the bond of craving. By the aforesaid parable, the stringent nature of craving should be discerned. So that's the ability of the craving, the bonding ability of the craving. So there's the sutra in Kosala Samyutta in the connected discourses, Samyutta Nikaya, the Bandhana Sutta. So once venerable monks went for alms, for Pindapati. Then they witnessed the King Kosala's prison, and the monks witnessed the prisoners were bound with the iron chains, and they were unable to break them howsoever. So the monks were surprised to see that they were tied with very, very strong chains, and They were like protected with very, very high walls around. And when they returned to the monastery, they were discussing about this, how strong that they were tied in the prison. So the Buddha heard this, and the Buddha also joined the discussion. And then the Buddha said them, monks, remember, this is not very difficult or strong bond or, tie. The more strong,
Craving.
yes, tied is the craving that you attach to the skandhas and the things. So it's very difficult to renounce, the craving to the sensual pleasures and so on and so forth. And there's another story about a monk, that the monk became a monk once. Then after some time, he became a layman again, thinking it's difficult to him. And you know how much times that he did? He did that 7 times. And somehow ultimately that he became a monk again, and he was so determined to achieve the Nibbana, and he accomplished his task. So these stories shows us how much strong the craving that attached to the pleasures and the skandhas. So it's very, very incredibly difficult to detach from the skandhas. So then the fourth characteristic of the craving is palibodhatta, obliteration of the path to nirvana. The nature or quality of craving that obtrudes, which means obstructs or hinders the noble path of the one who has ventured on after having convinced of suffering-based building of life is stipulated, palibodhatta. In another sense, obliteration of the path ahead of nirvana by repeated arousal of defilements also can be called palibodhatta. So the palibodhatta means how the defilements or the mainly craving hinder your spiritual development. That's what it means, the palibodha, being an obstacle. Some people get despaired of suffering by discourses of wise sages, which elaborates on taints of the 5 aggregates and benefits accrued upon attaining nirvana. Some other people become despaired of life after having experienced empirically the suffering inherent in the samsaric existence. Some of these despondents of life, by temporarily erasing to garner pleasure of the senses, determined to tread the noble path, devote themselves of observing the 5 precepts. The 8 precepts on Uposatha days, the meditating in samatha and in vipassana and performing other meritorious deeds while being lay people. Still some other despondents considering lay life as a state full of obstacles to attain nirvana, go forth from home to homelessness after forsaking wealth, family, relatives and friends, to liberate themselves from the burden of suffering by practicing the way of life adopted by Buddhist monks. Of all these religiously inclined people, not at least 1 in 100 can venture on continuously for a long time on their selected course of precepts and meditations. The reason being craving, tiding on to them and betaking them once again to sensual pleasures, which they slowed upon undertaking meditative practice. For the one who has resolved the abstinence according to the precepts, then taken them up, following thoughts emerge. I want to eat delicious food, want to dress flamboyantly, want to supply myself money, provide the wife with certain necessities, and similarly want to provide the children with their necessities. These sort of thoughts dominating the abider by the precepts, they have the effect of learning his mind towards a livelihood that suits such craving dominated thoughts, thereby relaxing his practice of precepts by these craving partisan dharmas or norms. So what it says here, the people, for several reasons, they tend to practice the spirituality. Maybe after listening the Dhamma or the discourses of the Buddha, or even after experiencing the suffering, they tend to practice the spirituality. But what it says here is very, very less percentage of the people who able to tread or walk in the spiritual path because of craving. After some time, most of them relaxes their practices. The main reason is because of craving. Yes, the obliteration or what the craving does here is obstructs or hinders the spiritual development by seeking various excuses, as mentioned before. Whatever that can be done only by the one who lives for a time with health and strength. If died, nothing would be able to be accomplished. If deceased, the same state of affairs obtains. Therefore, money has to be begotten to acquire the accoutrement of life. If a layperson, one's family has to be provided for and see to their well-being, making one's family suffer is a sin. Providing for one's family and striving for nirvana do not go together. If both pursued together, either wouldn't be done properly. Therefore, precepts combined meditation needs to be executed after laying down the burden of family life. Some craving induced, propelled discourses spurred on by craving dominated thoughts. The person who starts by resolving to observe precepts on every Uposatha day, once the Uposatha day dawns, deterred by aforesaid craving dominated thoughts, eases his mind and postponing the observance of precepts, goes to do some other work. Sometimes the very same person, due to the obfuscation caused by craving, skips observing precepts for several Uposatha days. Yet, perchance, may even do away with observing precepts altogether. Still, perhaps after being influenced by craving dominated impulses, and therewith settling the mind, goes on to commit what are professedly sins, such as taking lives of living beings, etc. This is how craving obtrudes the layperson on the Buddhist path of purification. So here it says several reasons why lay people change their spiritual practices and even ending up doing some sinful or evil deeds, mainly because of the nature, one of the natures of the craving, which is the obstructs the spiritual practices or the path. The craving dominated impulses piled up in the subconscious strata of the mind of one who has gone forth from home to homelessness or has entered the Buddhist priesthood. As time passes, make their impact visible, the mounting craving, just as in the case of the layperson, taxes the observance of the disciplinary rules of the Buddhist monk. The monk who for a certain period of time observe rigidly the rules of monastic discipline lapses from his high state of relaxes the strict disciplinary conduct by thinking in consonance with the craving dominated impulses. No need to strict discipline. It is enough to go with the flow of the time. Thus, the monk gives up worshipping the triple gem in the morning as well as in the evening, eats and drink as he wishes, passes the day with worldly involvement, and sleeps well into the morning till the sunlight has showered the world. The monk who has such relaxes his monastic policy is carried away by a further lot of craving. When craving crushes him thus, he thinks monkhood can never be maintained unless there is money, so he starts dealing with money. As time flows, he even starts to take food in the noon by considering himself as being sick. So also he forsakes some more precepts. Without even stopping at this, he disrobes or derobes and becomes a layman. This is all the way in which craving obliterates the path of the Buddhist monk. Thus, as craving stands in the way or blocks the path of the one who is desirous of or already on it, craving is said to be immanent of Palibodhatta. So it's not common only for lay people, it's common for monks as well, as it says here. I think in one of other book of this same author, this Venerable Bhante said that, I remember that as people surprised when monks disrobe. He said that you don't need to be surprised when this disrobe, you have to surprise when they do not disrobe. That's the
Because
power
craving
of,
is so strong.
yes, that's the power of craving. If in something there are the qualities of ayuhanatte, assembling of suffering, nidanatte, repeated fructification of suffering, Samyogatte, bonding with suffering, and Palibodhatte, standing in the way to end suffering. That is the real cause of suffering, dukkha. It is called the cause of suffering, samudaya satya, or the second noble truth. All these four qualities are present in craving, tanha. Other than in craving, these qualities can nowhere be found. Therefore, the exalted one, the champion of truth, solemnized craving as a real cause of suffering. So these are the four natures of suffering. And there's a story of the Bodhisattva, the Maha Bodhisattva, how the craving or the desires dispelled him by practicing the spirituality. It's one of the Jataka stories, as I remember. One of his previous lives, he was an ascetic, and he even had developed jhanas, the trances, by suppressing the 5 hindrances. So once he visited the king, so the king invited him to stay in his garden in park. So he accepted the invitation and he stayed in the king's park in a small kuti. And the king and the queen treated him very well. And he also practiced meditation there and advised the king and the queen. So once the king had to go to some other region to solve a dispute, and the king advised to the queen to serve the ascetic and look after him. So once, the ascetic came by in the sky because he had the jhanas. So when he came into the palace, he witnessed that the queen was half dressed, and the craving, the desire aroused in him, and he did somehow ended up doing adultery with the queen. So he had to, dispel from the jhanas. So then the king came there and he understood what's going on, and he questioned the ascetic, and he said he accepted that he did something wrong, and somehow after that he determined to practice meditation, and somehow he gained jhanas and left the palace. So this shows even ones who develop jhanas still
Craving is still there.
So the craving and all the defilements have 3 stages. I think you already know. The latent tendencies like anusaya. Then if a suitable object, if they meet a suitable object, then they arise, like come up. Then if the craving is more powerful, then it comes to the 3rd level, which is end up committing unwholesome activities like transgression stage. In Pali, we call anusaya, pariyuttana, and vitikkama. So the craving has this much power to hinder or obstruct the spiritual practices, no matter who, maybe monks or even lay people or ascetic or whoever practice spirituality. It can be hindered by the craving. So these are the 4 natures that the craving possessed. Yes. So anything to clarify or discussed, or any suggestions that you have to that you can give?
Avasrai Bhante, can you please explain about the 108 types of cravings? Is there something like that?
Yes. I have to go through some of the texts. I can't exactly remember.
Just name them, or if not, yes, you can do it Bhante next time. That's all right.
Yes.
As far as I can remember, Bhante, it's corresponding to 6 senses, then the external objects, plus the time, past, present, and future, something like that.
Yes, I barely remember, but I can't remember exactly.
That's all right, Bhante,
Yes,
because it just
exactly.
came to my mind because
Yes,
you
I will do
explained
it.
about craving.
Maybe I'll do it next time.
Okay, Bhante, I hope I
yes.
didn't trouble you.
No,
Sorry.
that's absolutely fine. That it's okay. I have to be honest that that's why I said that
That's
I'm
all
not
right,
clear.
Bhante. It just came to my mind that I have
Yeah, it's okay.
heard about it
I'll
through a sermon,
yeah,
or I have
I'll
read it in a book.
yes, I also remember that I think in even Ratana Sutra it explains something like about I'm not sure. So somehow I will find exact explanation about yes.
Lots of
108
grades to you,
cravings.
Bhante.
Yes, thank you. Mahinda Mahatma, anything to add or discuss more?
No, Bhante, it's clear. Thank you.
Okay, then we can wind up our discussion here.
Yes.
Okay, today that we discussed this noble Dhamma and we generated enormous amounts of wholesome thoughts in our hearts. So let's transfer these merits to the departed ones. Idammi ñātīnaṁ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Idammi ñātīnaṁ hotu sukhitā hontu ñātayo. Let's transfer merits to the deities as well. Itthavata ca amhehi sambhataṁ punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Itthavata ca amhehi sambhataṁ punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. May the merits that we've generated right now lead us to supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Peruvan Saranai, may the Noble Triple King bless you all.
Peruvan Saranai, Bhante.